The first card was empty in the middle. Nora Salcedo held it up to the light in Plaza de la Virgen Blanca, expecting a watermark, a printing joke, or at least the number of clubs promised by the back of the card. But in the center of the playing card, there was a little die-cut window, clean and precise, as if someone had very carefully cut out the most important part of the drawing. In one corner, half a balcony remained in red ink. In the other, the golden curve of something that might have been a cup, a crown, or the elegant ear of a very vain horse. The whole deck was the same: beautiful borders, incomplete suits, figures split apart by a gap. And inside the box, a note written in tiny handwriting said, "If you find the Queen before the bells strike 12, Vitoria will show you the path hidden in plain sight." Nora looked at the clock on the nearby bell tower. It was 10:22. She had come to Vitoria-Gasteiz to prepare a simple route for walkers. Clear, pleasant, with reasonable slopes and good places to pause without getting in anyone's way. Her notebook was full of arrows, estimated times, and observations like "comfortable bench beside shade" or "old sign worth looking up for." Nothing in her assignment said she had to accept challenges made of cardboard, but Nora was a designer of walking maps for a reason. She liked paths that seemed to say, "Come on, if you dare to pay attention." Finding a queen before noon seemed practically like a work meeting with better handwriting. The stall where she had bought the deck was a folding table beside a pile of used books. The seller, a man in a grey beret with the smile of someone who enjoyed leaving questions unanswered, had charged her €3 and told her, "Sometimes cards are not for playing, they are for strolling." Nora had wanted to ask whether this was part of some guided tour, but the seller was already arguing with a woman about whether a novel should cost less because there was a dog bite on the cover. So she set the box on her notebook and read the rule written on the bottom. Each suit marked a kind of place: cups for squares, coins for old shops, clubs for narrow lanes, and swords for doorways with history. She could only move on to the next card when she lined the little window up with a real detail on a facade. "Very well," she murmured. "A demanding deck, but a polite one." The card of cups showed half a balcony and the curve of a small roof. Nora lifted it in front of the square. At first, everything almost fit, and nothing fit completely. One railing promised to be the right one, but the arch came out crooked. One moulding seemed perfect, but the card turned the facade into a man with an angry eyebrow. She walked a few steps, turned with the calm movement of Plaza de la Virgen Blanca, and tried again. Then the little window caught a real balcony. 4 black bars completed the drawing, the cornice filled the golden curve, and the card lit up with a soft glow, like ink warmed in the sun. A 3 of cups appeared. Beneath the number, a phrase said, "Squares keep voices. Search where a promise was made with steel in plain sight." Nora felt that small joy of riddles that do not humiliate you but invite you in. Square, promise, steel, Plaza del Machete. The morning had that clean shine of northern cities when the sky decides to be in a good mood. Under the arcades, conversations sounded like teaspoons stirring coffee. Nora headed toward the medieval almond-shaped old quarter with a lively step, not hurried. Vitoria seemed to have a special talent for human-sized clues: a coat of arms above a doorway, a door knocker with the face of a serious animal, a corner that changed centuries as soon as you turned it. In Plaza del Machete, she took out another card of cups. It showed half an arch and a sharp line. Nora did not look for the whole machete, but for its gap, its place in the wall, She moved the card millimeter by millimeter. A child passing by with his grandfather stopped. "She's taking a picture without a phone," he said. "It's harder," Nora replied. "At least a phone doesn't insist on being a riddle." The grandfather pointed toward the facade. "Try a little farther to the right. The Machete has always been very particular." Nora obeyed. The little window caught the profile of the niche, and the sharp line completed itself. A 5 of cups appeared on the card, with little cups that looked like ceremonial inkwells. The new phrase said, "Where everyone looks at the blade, the handle is missing. Go up through a narrow lane and look for a club that is not a stick, but a trade." "A somewhat bossy piece of advice," said Nora. "Then it is very local," the grandfather replied, satisfied. Nora wrote in her notebook, "The deck does not give directions, it gives ways of looking." She took out a card of clubs. The drawing showed a beam, half a wheel, and something like a hand holding a tool. From the square, the streets climbed with determination. Nora chose a narrow lane, the sort where a conversation at one window seemed as if it could be answered by another window opposite, without anyone raising their voice. She got it wrong 3 times. She lined the card up with an iron grill, and the drawn beam turned into a mustache. She tried an eave. Nothing. She tried the edge of a street lamp. For a second, the card trembled, but it only showed a tiny blot that said, in minuscule letters, "Do not cheat with modern street lamps." Nora burst out laughing. "Sorry, it won't happen again." She climbed a little farther. There, on a narrow facade, an old piece of timber crossed above a secondary door. It was not spectacular. Anyone could have walked past without seeing it. But the drawing had a notch exactly like it. Nora raised the card. The gap embraced the real beam, and the half-wheel was completed by the round shadow of a vent. A 7 of clubs appeared. The clubs were not sticks from a card game, but measuring rods, tool handles, stacked slats. The phrase said, "Working hands climbed through these lanes. The city is not only seen from the front, it is also understood through its shortcuts. Now choose, gold that shines or gold that has worked." Beneath it, 2 drawn arrows appeared. One pointed toward a wider street with modern shop windows. The other climbed along a less comfortable street toward old signs and stone doorways. Nora looked at the clock. 11:04. The arrow toward the shop windows was faster. The other seemed better, but also less certain. In a real walking route, she thought, the most direct path does not always win. What wins is the path that teaches you to walk better. Even so, she tried the shiny option first, just to check. That was what she told herself. She went down a few meters toward a modern shop window with a perfect golden logo. The card of coins trembled at once, tempting her. The little window captured a gleaming letter, the curve of a coin almost fit, and Nora was just about to smile in triumph. Then the card stiffened like an offended biscuit. New letters appeared slowly. "That is golden. It is not gold." The deck closed by itself with a very polite snap. "Ah," said Nora. "Consequences." It was not serious, but it was clear. She had lost time, and the deck had stopped giving her the next clue. The incomplete cards had shuffled themselves. There was no longer one on top waiting its turn. Nora opened her notebook. If the deck was silent, she would have to work for herself. She quickly drew the triangle of places she had visited: Virgen Blanca, Machete, the lane with the beam. Then she marked the types of space: square, promise, trade. The next gold should not be luxury, but old commerce, worn letters, repeated work. And if the final destination was the local tradition of playing cards, she remembered something she had read before coming. Heraclio Fournier, The Making of Cards, the museum in the Bendagna Palace near Cuchillería Street. "All right," she said. "I'm not looking for what shines. I'm looking for what printed." She took the less comfortable street. On a discreet facade, she found an aged sign above a shop that had changed its line of business. The letters, almost eaten away by time, seemed to remain there out of politeness. Nora lifted the card of coins. She did not center it on the name, but on a corner where the varnish had flaked away and revealed earlier layers. The little window captured a curve of old paint. The card warmed between her fingers. A knight of coins appeared, but the horse wore no armor. It carried saddlebags full of printed booklets. The phrase said, "The gold of a city does not always gleam. Sometimes it is in paper, ink, patience, and a steady hand. If you are looking for figures, do not ask only about kings. Ask who printed them." Then all the cards inside the box made a soft frr, like a group of people rearranging themselves in a line. When Nora opened it, the completed cards were at the bottom. On top was a white card with no visible suit and with a little window larger than the others. It had only one red line on one edge and a golden dot in the lower corner. On the back, a new phrase had appeared. "Figures do not live in the box. They arrive when the city lends what is missing. There will be no more clues." Nora looked at the clock. 11:27. "How thoughtful," she said. She could no longer waste time trying every pretty doorway. She needed to choose. The white card asked for a tall door, spoke of figures, and had appeared just after the clue about printed playing cards. The Fournier Playing Card Museum in the Bendagna Palace was the most logical answer, but the deck had already punished the obvious once. Nora took a breath. A good route is not drawn only with data. It is drawn with behavior. Where would she take a walker who had just learned to look at squares, lanes, signs, and doorways? Not to a secret point. To a place where all of that gathered in a door. She chose the Bendagna Palace. Cuchillería Street seemed to keep the names of trades like labels on a large drawer. Cutlery, shoemaking, ironwork, footsteps and purchases, closed umbrellas, open umbrellas, and at least 3 opinions about the best place for dinner. Nora walked on with the white card in her hand and her notebook under her arm. She was surprised to notice that her first map, the one she had drawn for usefulness, was falling short in a pleasant way. She had marked slopes and resting places, yes, but she had not marked when a street forces you to raise your eyes or when a worn sign says more than a new one. That was not a failure of a map. It was an improvement waiting to happen. She found the palace facade and stopped. The building had the quiet elegance of houses that do not need to raise their voice. There, linked to the playing card collection bearing the Fournier name, the local tradition of cards stopped being a side note and became stone, entrance, proportion. Nora took out the white card. The door-shaped little window seemed too obvious. Precisely for that reason, she hesitated. First, she tried a high window. Nothing. A side molding. Nothing. A coat of arms. The card stayed white. 11:38. She tried the main door from too close. It did not fit. She stepped back 3 paces. The gap caught part of the arch, but the red line hung there without meaning. She moved to one side. The golden dot landed exactly on a metal stud, and the card produced the tiniest flash, almost a cough. "Ah, "You like that," said Nora. A passing couple glanced at her discreetly. Nora raised the card as if greeting them with an official document. The couple went on, laughing softly. Then Nora understood that she was not supposed to complete the door with the whole door, but with its exact proportion. The little window was not a frame meant to enclose the building. It was a gap asking the building for one single piece. She stood in front of the doorway, at a distance where the real door narrowed inside the die-cut opening. She lifted her hand a little, lowered her wrist just barely. The red line found the upper curve of the arch. The golden dot settled on the stud like a jewel. The shadow of the entrance hall filled the center of the card, and the Queen appeared. She did not appear like an illustration springing from nowhere, but as something more ingenious. The real door completed her dress. The voussoirs became a crown. The studs became golden buttons. The shadow of the entrance hall drew the fold of a cloak. The red line, which had seemed loose, was the outline of a sleeve. The Queen of Cards was not printed on the card because she needed Vitoria to lend her a body. On the card there could now be read a 12 of coins and swords crossed in miniature, as if all the suits had decided to sign together. Beneath the figure, one final phrase appeared. The Queen was not missing. Nora let out her breath slowly, happy. The used bookseller appeared a few steps away, as if he had simply been strolling over from the square without hurry. He carried a green-covered volume under one arm and a paper bag. "Has the lady arrived?" he asked. Nora lowered the card, though the Queen remained complete as long as the doorway stayed behind it. "She has arrived, and in a very fine dress. Stone always suits her." "Did you know it worked?" "I know that some people buy the deck, look at 2 cards, and say it was cut wrong. Others use it to fan their coffee, and a few begin arguing with balconies. Those usually find her." Nora looked at the box. Now the completed cards had clear numbers, figures made with fragments of the city, and tiny texts in the margins. "Who made it?" "People with far too much fondness for walks, local history, and precision scissors," said the seller. "Some people collect stamps. Around here, we also collect ways of looking." Nora laughed. "That sounded rehearsed." "Since about 1984. Nora did not know whether he was serious, nor did she especially care. There were 15 minutes left until 12. She had more than enough time to return to Plaza de la Virgen Blanca, close the circle, and mentally remake her route. She took out her notebook. On the page where she had written "Simple Route for Walkers," she added, "Do not begin by explaining the history. Begin with an incomplete card. Goal: find the Queen. Rule: look precisely. Reward: Vitoria fits." The seller nodded, reading upside down with troubling talent. "Good map." "It isn't finished yet." "Better. Maps that are completely finished get a little proud." Nora put the Queen card back in the box. As soon as she separated it from the doorway, the figure became incomplete again. It no longer seemed like a loss. On the contrary, it was a promise of repetition. The city supplied the stone, the card supplied the gap, the walker supplied the attention. When the bells began to strike 12, Nora was once again near Plaza de la Virgen Blanca, light-footed and with her head full of new arrows. She did not run. There was no need. The Queen had been found before the hour, and noon did not sound like an ending, but like a printer's stamp on a proof well made. At the used bookstall, the table was still full of novels, old atlases, and manuals with optimistic titles. Nora left 3 more coins beside the tin cash box. In case the deck cost 6 and you only charged me half. The seller raised an eyebrow. No, I charged you for the cards. The city supplied the other half. Nora accepted the answer because it was absurd in an impeccable way. Then she sat for a moment on the edge of the square, opened her notebook, and drew the symbol she would use on her new route. Not an arrow, not a monumental star, but a small, empty rectangle, a little window. Beside it, she wrote, "Pause here. Look until something fits." Before closing the notebook, she took out the queen once more and held it up against the square. It did not complete itself there, of course. The palace door was not there. The studs did not shine. The crown of voussoir was far away. But by chance, a balcony appeared in the little window, and for 1 second, the incomplete queen seemed to wink with the black railing. Nora laughed to herself, which is one of the best signs that a walk has gone well. Then she put away the deck, slung on her backpack, and began walking again, no longer looking for a lost figure, but testing how many other cards a city could finish when someone offered it the exact right gap.